editor's always like, could there be more exciting things, dragons, murder, more? And I'm like, you're right, there should be more. I'm Gabriella Buba. I'm a Filipino-Czech American author based in Texas, and I write epic fantasy for bold brown bi women.
Saints of Storm and Sorrow is described as a Filipino-inspired epic fantasy following a nun concealing a goddess-given gift and willingly transformed into a lightning rod for her people's struggle against colonization. Can you talk to us about the inspiration behind Saints of Storm and Sorrow and the beginnings
Yeah,
of Lunuran's story? How did that come about? What was the process like?
absolutely. So I started a version of Saints that was not called Saints many, many years ago, back when I was still in high school in 2011, 2012. That's when I finished the first draft of what became Saints. I'd been trying to, that's my cat. She's enjoying morning lap time.
Okay, we have a guest.
Yes.
I'm holding it.
So I had been trying to tell this story of a failed child chosen one, and I really didn't have the chops for it. And I spent multiple years rewriting it every couple of years, trying to make this story work. And then finally, in like 2018 ish, I found a mentor, an author who writes Taiwanese American fantasy. And she like got a hold of me and was like, the reason your stories don't work is because your stories are full of Filipino people who you pretend are white people or some other kind of ethnicity because you think Filipino people won't sell. But look at my book. And I sat down and in a month I rewrote it as Filipino, and like it was like the eureka spark. It was instantaneous. Everything worked. Everything fell into place. The specific like inspiration in Filipino history that helped me nail it down to like the place and time that I chose was I was doing a bunch of deep dive research, and I came across the story of the oldest Black Madonna in the Philippines, and she's still in their Ermita Church in Manila. I believe she was. I'm not good with dates, so I'm gonna have to look up my author's note because I will mix it up. But so she was like discovered by the Spanish, quote unquote, in 1571, and she was already being worshipped on a beach. She was a pre-colonial goddess of some kind, and the Spanish scooped her up and put her in a church and says, you can come visit Mother Mary, repeat after me, in the church on Sunday and get baptized. And they were digging, the article I was reading was like digging into what her origins might be. They're like, maybe she's a oriental goddess, like based on the like eye shape, but we don't know her name anymore. We don't know who she was. And I sat there and I thought, do you think she's angry we forgot her name? And like the entire story spawned off of that.
I saw you were at the Fondren Library in Texas recently doing more research, which I found particularly fascinating. So when I was reading Saints, it was really interesting to me to see like terms used in pre-colonial Filipino mythology, like the Catalonan, and then the transformation of the old gods into conditioned saints, which was what happened with, like you said, with actual pre-colonial Philippines. And then there's the world building, heavily inspired by the Spanish colonial period of Manila. I'd love to learn more about the research that you did and you're doing now for the next book. And if there was anything that was particularly interesting that you found during the whole research process.
So Fondren Library is at Rice University, where I went to university. So that's like my home library. I did a ton of research with they have an Asian Institute selection. And so they have a lot of really useful works there. And then they have online access to a lot of works that are otherwise incredibly expensive. Early Philippine history books and a lot of like seminal works of Philippine history and research and anthropology are like $500 online.
And then
which
shipping.
is, yes, yeah, it's wild, and that's so inaccessible. I
Mm,
feel like if I didn't have all of the different university connections and all
mm,
of that, I really would not have had access to a lot of what I needed to write these stories. And that's kind of sad. Like,
mm.
people should have access to their own histories, I feel.
Yeah.
Um, so it was a lot through my library. I actually reached out to professors in the Philippines. I was reading like active research. And when I had questions, I was reaching out to the folks who were writing it, and they were so generous with their time. It was really awesome. When I was writing that poem that appears in chapter 1, I'm always confused what chapter it ended up in. I reached out to a couple of professors on like early Tagalog poetry and music, and like we talked about the structures that were used and the like focus of the works and kind of what made Filipino Tanaga poetry unique. And they were so helpful to me, and I really appreciate all the time that they spent. So yeah, I think that was one of my favorite pieces of research, just because I got to collaborate with people who are like spend their whole life researching this, and they're so interesting to talk to. Another really interesting like pre-colonial piece of information that I came across was that like I can't remember exactly where I found it. I think I was reading a Spanish chronicler's like writings on pre-colonial law and punishment, and there was this fascinating bit about like hair culture. And you may notice that I have a lot of hair. I'm kind of into hair. Hair is very important to me. And like hair care and hair culture and hair taboos are fascinating. And there was this bit where it was like, the women here, they wear their hair like down to their feet. And if an unmarried man touches like a woman's hair, that is incredibly taboo. And I was like, that's fascinating. Tell me more. But of course, I could find very little more. And I actually included some of that in Saints as like an intimacy that Alan feels he is crossing with Laverne too soon. And that was fun.
I remember reading that. I remember reading it, yeah. That's amazing. Speaking of Lunurin, Alon, and Catalina, those three have a really interesting relationship and dynamic between the three of them. Catalina almost representing the condition ideal that Lunurin is trying to live towards, I guess, and Alan representing the world that she used to have and is still trying to preserve but kind of fighting against. The two sides of Lunurin vying for attention, if you will. What was it like writing those three characters and their relationships with each other?
Oh, they're so fun. They're so messy. And I love messy relationships. I love messy, complicated relationships. And yes, you're absolutely right. For me, like they are each navigating their position in colonial society in a different way. And their starting points have affected kind of what options are available to them. So like Leonard's kind of in the middle. She's a woman, which puts her at a disadvantage, but she has that connection to her culture and her power that lets her like hold on to some semblance of like self-identity. And Alan is a man, and he's rich and he has power. And so he has some protection from the colonial power that they're all living under. But Catalina has none of that. She's from a poor family. She has no family left in Manila that can care for her to fall back on. If she leaves the church, she will be essentially destitute. And in her worldview, like really, that's the only way to get ahead here. That's the only way she's going to end up not in an early marriage in a slum somewhere along the river. And that's not what's going to happen to her. She's not going to let it happen.
Hmm.
And so, like, from her perspective, like the church has made promises to her about like protecting her life and livelihood and her standard of living. And if she can meet their expectations, they'll meet hers. And of course, they end up letting her down horribly. But she's really just trying to survive under the system that she was presented with. And so I really feel for her. A lot of people really hate Catalina. And I'm like, at one point, we were all a little like Cat, okay? Like, maybe that's the latent baby Catholic in me. But I'm like, we've been there.
Hmm.
We've been there. And I feel for her. I do. And in early iterations, actually, they were not explicitly Catholic. So Catalina actually did eventually come around. Catalina becoming Catholic kind of froze. It made her a lot more inflexible. And so that's kind of how we ended up where we end up in the book, apart. Originally, they ended up in a happy polycule situation. Laverne got the best of both worlds. I was thrilled for her in the early drafts. I loved Catalina. Catalina came around. Catalina became Catholic, and Catalina refused to come around. And I was like, come on, babe. We can do this together. And he was like, absolutely not. My immortal soul is on the line.
Did she actually say that in a book as well? Yeah.
Yes. My characters sometimes fight me on what I want to have in the story. It's not often. I'm usually pretty like in control of my narrative and my characters. But Catalina becoming Catholic became like a real sticking point for the rewrite.
Well, I'm happy to hear that an alternate universe or a happy polycule, because I was so sad, like near the end of the book when that happened to Catalina. I was like, oh.
I know. In another world. She could have come around.
There could have been a trio.
But it just didn't work out. I was really sad about it.
Yeah. I'm sad about it now.
I know.
Now that I know that. Other than now that I know that Catalina has changed since the first draft, are there other areas in the books that you originally planned for something else to happen, or for the certain characters to be a different way, but in the final draft they became completely different?
Yeah, let me think. So it's kind of hard because I actually rewrote this story from the ground up like 4 times. So a lot of things changed, but I tried to keep the spirit of them the same, if that makes sense. So Cinna actually had 3 siblings, but it was getting confusing for people. So she had 2 sisters and a brother. And then I went down to a brother and a sister. But the brother was hard to keep track of during everything that was happening during the attack on the Palisade. So he got cut, unfortunately. I felt bad. I enjoyed Cinna's family. Cinna and her little family was like, Cinna's one of my favorite side characters. Cinna and like her whole thing with her family is like great to me. Because she's a little bit like Lenormand, completely uninhibited. Lenormand has some like, I have like responsibilities to the church and like they have power over me. So there are some things that I shouldn't do. And Cinna's like, what if I burned everything down? What then?
And they're going, yes, do it.
But you need a friend in the back that's like, yes, burn it all down. I've got the Molotov cocktail. Let's do it, babe. So that's what Cinna really is for Lenormand, and I support her in that.
Yeah, we love her for that.
Let me think. Other big things that changed.
You mentioned that Saints of Storm and Star was supposed to be a standalone. I don't know if I'm allowed to ask that.
Yes.
We'll cut it if I'm not allowed to ask it.
Perfect. No, it's perfectly fine. So I queried Saints as standalone. I didn't really have a great vision for what happened after Saints. Like, it was kind of nebulously there, but not a full story. And Saints ends at a really kind of nice place to pause. Like, we've done it. We've thrown off the yoke of oppression, and now we're going to fix things. And it was a good spot. Like, it felt strong. And then during negotiations with my editor, my agent said, would you write up a synopsis for book 2? And I was like, sure, I'd love to. And so I wrote a 1-page synopsis, and like a day later, we sent it over to my editor, and they were like, we'd love it. It's a 2-book deal now. And I was like, oh, it's that easy? You just take my word for it? You think I can do that again? Wow, that's bold. I don't know how I feel about that. So book 2 was hard. I had spent a lot of time in the trenches, a lot of time writing books for the purpose of querying. And the advice is always, don't write a sequel. Don't think about a sequel. Don't write a sequel. It's wasted time if you don't sell book 2. And between that and being incredibly burnt out due to a lot of family tragedies and difficulties, I couldn't write book 2 for like 7 months. I would sit down every day and I'd write 100 words. And I'd be like, that's it. That's all I've got. It was like crawling on hands and knees through broken glass. Like, the book was supposed to be delivered in July and I had 10,000 words. And I was like, that's where this is. Luckily, my editor was very understanding. They gave me an extension. I wrote the entire book in a absolute haze of caffeine, exhaustion, antidepressants in the months of September and October. I don't think I did anything except write during those months. My husband kept me alive. He would like just ferry food to me at various times throughout the day and be like, please eat this. Think about sleeping, maybe. Um,
Oh,
so I wrote the entire books those 2 months and then did a very, very fast revision of it to make things happen.
oh wow.
I would not recommend it.
Oh,
But it was my fault. It was my fault. I was the one at fault there for not delivering the book for 7 or 8 months.
well, like you said, you were going through things, I find it quite difficult to write when everything else is happening. So
Yes.
I really enjoy the passages of when Aniton Tabu and like her anger against the colonizers and the conquistadors, replacing the magic and the gods with their saints. What was it like writing those passages and writing Lunurin's response? Her at first her reluctance towards it, and then later giving in to that anger, and I wrote Unbridled Storm. What
I
was that?
love that. Yes. For me, I think writing is very therapeutic. Like
Hmm.
for me, writing is like wringing my grief on the page and then being like, what if something different happened? So I feel like I carry a lot of generational trauma from like the stories that my grandmother would tell me about, growing up under the influence of the church, which was incredibly corrupt, and continues to be, unfortunately. Like the Archdiocese of Galveston just had a horrible scandal. It's still here. It's still with us, and we're still kind of letting it happen. And maybe we shouldn't. That was kind of the basis of the energy behind the book. I want people to come away with it thinking like maybe it's time that we say no more. Maybe we say this is where it stops. Like bad things happened to me and in my past and to my family behind me, and here we stop it. And maybe that's just wishful thinking, but I also find it empowering.
Yeah. I really enjoyed those passages. And when Leonoran finally gave in, I was like, it's about time. It's
Yes.
about time.
Yes.
Now that the duology is finished with the second book coming out, what was the most challenging when writing both Saints and the next book? Did you approach the second book differently? And in what way? In the
Hmm.
3 months of haze that you...
Let me think. Well, here's one thing that made Saints really hard. When I wrote Saints, I was not a planner. I didn't do any planning. I just started writing. And I created drafts that were incredibly hard to edit because they were kind of just whatever I was thinking in that particular moment. So I would spend years editing them into trying to be some semblance of a story. But because of how stuck I was on Daughters and because I'd learned kind of how to revise and how to write a lot more by the time I wrote the final version of Saints. I had an entire scene by scene outline, like every beat was outlined and like every character arc carefully pre-planned and exactly where everything was happening. That made the revision process for Daughters much easier. The revision process for Saints was literally a decade long. And it was hard. Like you had to let go of things that you loved. I feel like Daughters isn't wildly different from like the original first draft I wrote. It's better. Like things that I was trying to do that weren't working, we fixed. And like things that were choppy because I wrote it in the haze, we smoothed out. But like I didn't have to let go of huge scenes and character arcs and favorite characters. It also helps that it's a sequel, so you're kind of locked in on your character. Like these are the people. This is who it is.
Hmm.
So yeah, I'm trying to think of something like we had to cut from Daughters that like, oh, I was so upset about it. But really, I love my editor. She's always like, can there be more? And so we actually got more because my editor's always like, could there be more exciting things, dragons, murder, more? And I'm like, you're right, there should be more.
Speaking of more, Daughters of Flood and Fury is coming out on, is it July 22nd
22nd, yes.
in the UK? Can you tell us what we can look forward to? You've hinted at dragons and murder, and I read the
Yes,
synopsis, and am I right in assuming that the point of view is told through Inez's point of view in
it's
this one?
actually 3 points of view. We
Ooh.
kept Alan and Lenurin.
Okay.
So Alan and Lerner are dealing with a political crisis. Like the alliances that they have put together to stand against the Codicillean Armada that is coming to kill them all are absolutely falling apart. And they're having to deal with kind of that human disaster, as well as some fun supernatural ones. I can't take away the magic of the world. And Inez is trying to find her sister, and it's going to be a fun time.
It's going to be a fun time. Okay.
I think people are going to be more upset with me for this book somehow. I feel it, but don't worry about it. It's fine. You will not be traumatized. It'll be fun.
Oh, okay. Can't wait. Right.
I make it up to Inez. That's all I'm saying. I do. I felt so bad because you know how like in a lot of Western stuff, you have like a fridged wife or a fridged daughter that is like the driving force. And I felt like Inez was kind of I didn't fridge her. She didn't die, but bad things happened to trigger Lenore to finally do something, because Lenore was really frozen in that, like, if I don't do anything, nothing will change. Yeah. I really wanted to make it up to Inez and like give her her own like growth and story and like let her seize her power after everything that happened to poor Inez.
And are there other books that you're working on at the moment that you'd like to talk about?
I'm working on some short work right now. I was kind of really burnt out from full novels. Saint Daughters is even longer than Saints was. She's chunky. I don't know what happened. So I've decided that next I'm working on a short story for a witchy anthology. That's going to be my first like truly historical fantasy, like historical setting, no left step, no second world, Filipino fantasy, set in like late 1890s Nueva Ecija. My grandmother was from Nueva Ecija, and I kind of based it a little tiny bit on like her stories of being courted in her early life, but it's mostly a gothic horror. So just flirting bit, that was like family story, and the rest, I had fun. And then I will be working on a novella for, I think, I actually don't know if we're going to announce that. Maybe hold on, that one until I ink a contract. But yeah, working on my first novella. That'll be an exciting project. Also a true historical fantasy. I'm a little more, I need to do the real deep dive on the history there. Again, I'm basing on my grandmother's stories of World War II. She was in the Philippines and like alive and growing up during World War II in the Philippines, and had a lot of horrifying stories about Japanese occupation. And I want to set a story there. And I know it's going to be a sensitive topic, but also it's a family story that I deserve to get to like dig my hands into and unpack. I feel like for me, writing is a lot about like unpacking family history and generational trauma and anything that really like sits and bothers me. So much cheaper than therapy. Really, I recommend it.
Write a 400-page epic.
Yeah. Do you know how much a therapist would charge me to talk for that long?
That's true.
It's like $250 an hour here, man.
Write a book, get paid for it, process the whole thing. There you go. Perfect.
Profit.
Might as well. Lenore and Kat talk a lot about superstitions. Do you have any superstitions that you believe in?
I feel like a lot of Kat's superstitions and a lot of my grandmother's superstitions were like negative superstitions, like don't do this to avoid. I have a lot of, I guess, positive superstitions. Like I'm very much like, I can make things happen if I like want it and like envision it hard enough. Like I have superstitious procedures in order to like make the things come through that I want. Ooh. Call it witchcraft, call it whatever you want, but like I firmly believe in like the power of like focus, and it's not manifestation. It is manifestation. The human brain is incredibly powerful, and if you like focus on wanting a thing, you can make it happen. And maybe that's luck on my side and I'm like the weird side case, but really truly like that is my superstition. Like when I want a thing, I have a whole process of like setting up that intention and then like going for it without blinking. And I'm also very much like I don't share some things until they're ready, because like I do feel like there is a lot of, not jealousy is the right word, I suppose. And sometimes there is like a crab in the bucket mentality, even in our community, which I love and have truly supported me. But I do feel like there's a point where I don't roll on projects until they are like at a certain stage of readiness. Because I do feel like sometimes there's like people who don't want you to succeed, and you're like, no, I'm not going to give your energy that space in this intention. So those are my superstitions.
They're quite positive superstitions, you're right. If you were living in the world of the Stormbringer saga, which of the three goddesses do you think would call on you and why? Would you be a Stormcaller, a Tide Touch, or a Fire Tender?
Absolutely a Fire Tender. Cinna is my favorite side character because like we vibe deeply. Lenora needed to like resist her anger and not destroy everything immediately. Otherwise the book would have been over in 10 pages. But I'm not like that.
Very cool.
I was voted most likely to be arrested as an arsonist in high school.
Fitting.
They meant well. Probably. Maybe.
What's one writing advice you heard and have followed since?
So it was like a craft book I read really, really early. And unfortunately, I've forgotten the name and it drives me nuts regularly. I can like see the cover in my mind, but no idea what it was. And the advice was, you have to finish it. It doesn't have to be good, but it has to be finished. Like no one cares about work that is in progress. They care about what's done, what's out there. And until it's finished, you can't make it good. And honestly, like I stand by that. Like I was not ready to finish the Story of Saints when I did, but because it was finished, I was then able to work on it for a decade until I had the skills and the knowledge and the research to write what needed to happen. But if I hadn't finished the story, I don't think I would have had the like grounding in the characters and the spirit of it to then take that like one piece of interesting history and turn it into a whole book. So I'm a real big proponent of like, just finish it. Even if it's bad, even if you have to write the dumbest ending. A lot of the times I write the dumbest ending and the dumbest beginning, and then you fix it.
Can't fix a blank page.
Exactly.
What advice would you give to an aspiring writer?
That tends to be my piece of advice. That was so helpful to me. You've got to learn to finish a story. It's a skill set a lot of people never, they spend so long polishing chapter one, trying to make the middle work. The middle will always be soggy. Accept it, embrace it, move along, fix it later. Until you write that first 5 or 6 endings, I feel like you don't really like get the knack of finishing a piece. And I think that's the most important thing to learn as a writer, because you can't enter edits until it's finished, or you'll never finish.
I usually have a secret question that I don't include in my list of questions that I send over in advance, which is, if you were interviewed again, what question would you wish you were asked?
Oh, this is hard. So since book 1 has come out, I've done a lot of interviews with a lot of really incredible interviewers, and y'all are so insightful. Y'all see things in my book, I'm like, was that in there? Let me think. Things that I would like to be asked. You know, not many people ask me about Dalice and the Lacan, and I find their relationship fascinating. I love a toxic, horrible relationship. One day I'll write the version that when they were still in love, because they were weird about it. I know, and fascinating.
Ooh, okay.
Like, I just want to know where they were, where it ended up, where his wife wants him dead and he is willing to like destroy his children's entire lives so that they don't like repeat his sins. And I'm like, tell me more. That's fascinating.
Yeah, what happened there?
3 words: dragons, crocodiles. Too many words. Drownings. There we go. Dragons, crocodiles, and drownings. That's what book 3 is about.
Okay. I can't wait, because I think you mentioned, and I've been stalking your Instagram because of your like designing clothes, really cool clothes, and then hints towards what the book is, and you mentioned the Bakunawa, or like a moon-eating sea serpent, which I thought was a Bakunawa.
It is a Bakunawa. I used the Tagalog mythology word. Laho is what's in the book. But that's just because I really wanted to like localize the story to like the place. That's important to me. That's why I do so much research. I like want it to feel localized and not like Philippine conglomerate, because like really truly Philippine conglomerate doesn't exist. It's like a nationalistic dream, but it's not real. So I don't want my writing to like reflect that kind of, it's not stealing, but it's a conglomeration of a lot of different peoples. And like maybe we're more stable like that. I know that there's reasons for it, like politically, right? But like I want our stories to still feel unique and not mishmashed. I wanted to localize the mythology, the culture, all of that. So yeah, so I have the Laho, and yes, there will be moon eating
in book 2.
Oh, it's fun. I can't reveal what happens and why it's so fun because that'll totally spoil it. But you will love it.
I'm so excited. Yeah, I love the moon and sun eaters of Filipino mythology, and I agree. It's so regionally specific. Like you said, like Lahob, Bakunawa, and then there's like
There's the
Arimwanga.
crab.
There's the
crab that
crab.
eats the sun. There's a
like
giant.
a tiger. Or yeah.
Yes, there's a tiger. I love it. I absolutely love it. I love that we're all sitting there watching the moon go blood red, going, man, that's horrible and bad. I hope it comes back. Let's tell a story about that.
Yeah, and like the superstitions that happen to try and chase away whatever creature they believe in that chase those. I'm so
I actually
excited.
had this amazing experience. So I for a while I worked out in the field in West Texas. I'm a chemical engineer. I worked in oil and gas. And I'm out there with, for some reason, a photographer. I think he was there. I can't even remember. He was there with the company, though. And we're out at a 4 a.m. meeting, and I'm driving this man around. And he looks up, and there's an eclipse happening. The moon is blood red and shrinking, and he looks up with pure terror in his eyes. And he looks at me and he goes, yesterday, I was photographing the full moon. Why does it look like that? And I'm like, oh, there's an eclipse happening right now. You're not losing your mind. The world isn't ending.
Yeah. Was that the first time he's ever seen it?
I guess he just didn't like, it was like in the partial phase. So it didn't look like a full eclipse. It looked like a half moon. And like to go from a full moon to a half moon in one night, like that'd be terrifying too.
Oh, that's
I just love the like moment where he was like full, like pre any kind of science brain, just being like, I think the world is ending. And I was like, relatable.
Yeah. Well, it could be. Yeah.
It might be. Who knows?
That was all my questions. Thank you so much for your time today. I realize it's so early for you on a Saturday of all days.
Thank you for taking the time.
Yes, I'm genuinely so excited for book 2. Have a lovely the rest of your weekend then.
You too.
And I'll speak to you soon. Bye.